let's pay respect by saying Namo Tassa 3 times together, and then we will start today's session together. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa. Homage to the sublime, the victorious, and the totally self-enlightened one. Okay, is everyone ready? Yeah, okay. So just very quickly, last time we have been talking about mental processes, and we have finished with the Kamavachara mental processes, which are the sense sphere mental processes. And within the sense sphere mental processes, we can divide them into mainly 2 types. The first ones are the five sense door mental processes, which we can further divide them into different types of mental processes depending on which door and also depending on the object. So we have seen that there are very great objects, light object, and very slight object. So some sessions ago, we have seen that with the very great object, then the usual 17 moments of mental 5-door mental process will complete, and Tadārammaṇa will always also arise. And if the object is not as clear, then there will be less active chittas in the mental processes. So that was what we have looked at previously about the 5 sense door mental processes. And also, besides the 5 sense door, we also have the mind door process. And also for the mind door process, the objects can be clear and object can sometimes be not so clear. And also depending on that, the mental processes will be a little bit different too. Then with the mind door, the sense sphere mind door process, we have also seen that there are some types that are subsequent mental processes, meaning those processes that those mind door processes that happen after a 5 sense door mental process. So say we see something with a 5 door with an eye door mental process, then after looking at that, then the mind still don't understand what it is. So those subsequent mind door mental processes will collect information from what the eyes saw, and then we'll put them together, and then we'll see the concept of it, and then we'll give it a name, and those subsequent mental processes that we have already looked at. And also there are purely mind door processes, which does not have anything, well, not that this does not have anything to do, but then it's not directly related to what we just what is just taken through the 5 sense door processes. Yeah, so all this we have already finished looking at. Now, before we go to the other part, which are the Appana mental processes. Appana processes are only mind door. They are they are the special processes. They are the jhana processes and the magga process, right? So before we go to the Appana mental process, there are still something about the Kamavachara, the sense sphere mental processes that we need to look at. That is the Tadārammaṇa. So today we will first look at the Tadārammaṇa, how it arises, when it arises, and all that before we go to the other type of the mental processes, the jhana processes. Yes, Amar, you have a question?
Yeah, good morning. Yeah, I missed last 2 classes. I do have 2 questions. Not sure this is the right time to ask her.
What is it about?
So yeah, one question is there like a multi-processing, or like, is possible, or it's always a sequential, like in the computer there's a multi-processing, right? Multi-core processing, like that. Is this something like happening in the mind as well?
In the mind, always, you see, a mental process is actually a series of chittas that arise one after the other. So they all arise in order to do their own function, yeah? So there can only be one chitta at a time. So one chitta arises, it passes away, and then another chitta arises, and then it passes away. So there is only one at a time, and it goes in a sequence. So the mental process is in that way. So after one process, another process happens, because they are actually a series of chitta. So imagine that the chitta arise and passes, arise and passes, arise and passes, arise and passes. So it cannot be like multiple processes happening at the same time, because
So like
only one
then,
chitta can arise at a time.
yeah. So then, like yeah, from our perception, like when we hear and see, we normally like it sounds like it's happening at the same time, but it's not. It's sequential, right? It's
Yes,
probably like okay,
it's not at the same time. It's because it is so fast that we
right,
think
right.
that everything is
Yeah,
happening at the same time, looks like, but actually is one by one. So imagine like a movie. When we see a movie, like it's actually frame by frame now. It's like photos, all the photos put together, and then they look like they are alive, like it looks like the people are moving inside the movie. But if you look at it, one frame by one frame, it is actually like a photo. So in the same way, but this is the mind is so fast that it is even faster than how many 4K or how many K, I don't know now, this technology, like the very real movie, how many frames in per second, I don't know, but like for the minds it's like billions and billions of cheetahs
right.
per second, no? So
No,
that's why it looks so
no,
real.
chitta, I understand. I'm talking about the process where you have a 17 chittas, right? So that mental process. So that means like seeing and then hearing, then smelling. All these like is probably happening sequentially, right? It's just like seeing and then goes to hearing and come back to hearing, right? Okay, yeah.
Yes, exactly. If you understand chitta, then you understand the mental process, because mental process is just a series of chitta together. So it's in the same way.
So is there then like a process like so there is a like a seeing process, then it continues to mind. It has to process by the mind as well, right? So does it like like how to say, like it goes to seeing and the mind door process and then hearing and mind door process, or seeing like hearing and then mind door process happens later?
Last week, maybe if you haven't seen the video yet, then I recommend you look at the previous class, the video
Okay.
on in YouTube, because there we explained about how the five sense door process happened, and then later on there are some subsequent mind door process that help them, that actually the mind understand what we saw or what we hear at that time later on. So it must go through the five sense door process, and then some mind door process, and then again, then another five door process, and another some mind door process for the mind to process what we saw.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
if you have time to look at the previous video, it will be more clear.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll I'll watch again. I just watched briefly, but I didn't. Yeah, I'll watch again.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes. Thank you for your question. Okay. So yes, so we are talking about Tadārammaṇa. So if everyone's ready, shall we go to Tadārammaṇa now? Yeah. Okay. All right. Now, I hope you remember what is Tadārammaṇa. If you remember the usual process, mental process, then after the Jhāvana, there are two Tadārammaṇas that arise, right? But sometimes they arise, sometimes they do not arise. So today we are going to explain a little bit of which kind of Tadārammaṇa arise, if they do arise, or sometimes why they arise, sometimes why they don't arise. Yeah. Okay, so the first thing that we need to know is that Tadārammaṇa only occur in karma beings. So that means that Tadārammaṇa will only arise in the mind of beings in the sense sphere. So in the four lower plane, in the human plane, and in the Deva realms. So for the beings in the fine material plane and the non-material plane, for their mental process, Tadārammaṇa will not arise there. So first thing, Tadārammaṇa only arise in the karma being, and not all the time. When the karma being, when they are observing an object that is a sense object, a karma object, at that time Tadārammaṇa can arise. So first thing, karma being, karma object, and also the jhavanas must also be kamavachara jhavanas. And so these are the first criteria for Tadārammaṇa to arise. Okay, so that means that let's say in the human realm, for example, when a person, he or she sees some rupa, some visible object at that time, if the object is very clear, then in the five sense door process, it is possible for Tadārammaṇa to arise. And also in the mind door process, we can also take the sense object as object, right? So at those time, also this Tadārammaṇa can also arise. But it has to be a sense object in the sense sphere. And also this jhavana must also be kamavachara citas. Okay, so there are also a few other points or a few other conditions that determine or influence whether Tadārammaṇa will arise or not, or which type of Tadārammaṇa will arise. The first condition is actually the object itself. So we have already mentioned that the object must be a sense object. Yeah. So now let's take a look at the different types of object and how it influences and what kind of Tadārammaṇa arise or not. Now, among sense object, we have also looked at it in previous chapters, that there are disagreeable object, and we have also agreeable object and very agreeable object. Do you still remember that? Yes. So when we look at the kusala vipaka and akusala vipaka, the wholesome resultant and the unwholesome resultant, when we look at that, then we mentioned about this agreeable or disagreeable object. So what are those disagreeable objects? Disagreeable objects are actually those objects that the unwholesome resultant consciousness take as their object. For example, if we have done some unwholesome actions, unwholesome karma previously, and at this time there are enough conditions for this unwholesome karma to give result, then this result will happen, and then let's say an I consciousness will arise, and the object taken by this consciousness, which is a resultant of an unwholesome action previously, we will see something that is not agreeable. So those are the disagreeable object. And sometimes, on the other hand, as a result of previous good karma, previous good action that we have done, and at this time, when it is giving result, then this I consciousness that arises at that time will see something that is pleasant, that is agreeable, or sometimes very agreeable. So those depend on our past karma, right? Those are resulting consciousness, right? Okay, so we may also say that, but how do we define whether an object is agreeable or whether it is disagreeable? Because we may say that sometimes for someone, this something may be agreeable, but for another person, it might not be. So in the commentaries, it is said that to determine whether an object is agreeable or not, there are different ways to do so. And the first one is that we have to determine it with regard to an average person. So how an average person would take this object. If we take let's say a normal object which is good, but for a very let's say for a very rich person, maybe this ordinary object might not be so agreeable for him. Or if with this same object, if we take it, even very, very poor person take it, then it might be a very agreeable object for him. So it is hard to say whether this object is agreeable or not. So the commentaries mentioned that we have to take an average person, like the normal average person, not too poor or not too wealthy, or an average person, to decide whether this object is desirable or not. And also, sometimes the quality of the object can also change depending on other conditions. Say hot lemon tea can be an agreeable object if the weather is cold. But if it is like in a very, very hot summer day, then a hot lemon tea might not be so agreeable. So depending on the conditions also, then it can also change whether the object is an agreeable object or not. And another interesting thing is we can also decide whether the object is agreeable or not by way of door. Have you ever seen some flowers that have a bad smell? Sometimes some flower look very beautiful, but it smells really bad. Yeah. So say this kind of flower, it can be considered as an agreeable object to the eye. Yeah. But for the nose, it might be a disagreeable object. So also depending on the door, then this object also may be agreeable or disagreeable. Okay, so in this way, the objects, we have to see it from average person's perspective, and we can determine it through the doors, and also depending on other conditions such as weather, etc. No, okay. So some teachers also say that we can also determine whether an object is agreeable or disagreeable by the cheetah that takes it. Now, as we have studied in previous chapter, the cheetahs that take disagreeable object is always a result of a previous unwholesome action. Yeah, so an akusala vipaka cheetah. So if we, this is like looking at the other way around. So if the cheetah that arises is an akusala vipaka, then we can decide that that object is a disagreeable object. If the cheetah that takes it is a kusala vipaka, then we can decide that it is then we can tell that the object is an agreeable object. So it is also possible. It's just like looking at it on the other from the other way, no? Okay. So now disagreeable object is easy to understand. Now for agreeable object, it is not only just agreeable. There is also another category, which is the very agreeable object. So let's take a little look of what is the difference. If we see something nice, or we taste something good, or a good smell, or a nice touch, or some nice music, or some nice sound, then we know that it is agreeable. But sometimes there are some objects that are not just agreeable, it can be a very agreeable object. Let's take an example. If we smell some flower, it smells good, it can be agreeable. But for example, one day we are sick, and then we need to have, let's say, how do you call that? Like this, a steam bath or something. So we put some hot water, and then we put some lavender essence oil or something, and then it actually it doesn't only just smells good, but it's very good for the body. And at that time, those smells can also be not just agreeable, but can be very agreeable. So some objects, sometimes it can be the same thing, but depending on the situation, it can be a very agreeable object. Also, there are other examples that are given by our teachers. For example, for a Buddhist, when we see the Buddha's image, that can be a very agreeable object to us. But sometimes for people who are non-Buddhists, then the Buddha image might not be such an agreeable object for them. So this also can be different. Now, another example, a more common example. Say for a man, maybe a young lady could be a very agreeable object, but maybe for another lady, that young lady might not be such a very agreeable object, right? So depending, then it also can vary. Okay, so now let's take a look at an example of a mind door process to see how this object, whether they are disagreeable, agreeable, or very agreeable, influence the Tadārammaṇa. Now let's take an example. Say we have this very disagreeable object here, and then a nose door mental process happens. Yeah. So in this case, Bhavaṅga, 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 the Bhavaṅga shakes and then vibrates and then stop. Then the 5-door averting consciousness arise. Then the nose consciousness will arise. Then receiving and investigating, and then the Bhavaṅga determining, and then the Jhavana will happen. And then here, because the object is very clear, it is very clearly presented to the mind in a very clear way. So Tadārammaṇa will also arise here. But since this object is a disagreeable object, we can know that the nose consciousness and the receiving and the investigating consciousness that arise here is actually akusala vipaka citta. No? That is because of a previous unwholesome deed that we did before, unwholesome karma. So now the result is manifesting, and we are encountering with a disagreeable object. So this consciousness are actually resultant of an unwholesome consciousness. Okay, so in this case, if this is an unwholesome vipaka, then this Tadārammaṇa here also will also be an akusala vipaka, and in this case, a santirana citta with the Tadārammaṇa function. So Tadārammaṇa, the aftertaste is actually the name of a function. It's not the name of a specific type of citta. Just like Bhavaṅga, Bhavaṅga is a resultant consciousness, but Bhavaṅga is a function, right? It's life continuum. So Bhavaṅga is not a specific type of citta, but it is the function of that citta. Remember? So what kind of citta can be Bhavaṅga? It can be for a human being, it can be a mahavipaka. So it can be a wholesome resultant with roots most of the time, and sometimes without roots, depending on what kind of rebirth consciousness the person is born with. Yeah, if you remember the previous contents that we have studied before. So in this case, Tadārammaṇa, this aftertaste that come after the jhāvana, is also a function. And in this type of, let's say in this example, the citta that perform this Tadārammaṇa function is actually the santirana, akusala vipaka santirana citta, unwholesome resultant investigating consciousness. This santirana, it has quite a lot of function. Remember, it can be the rebirth consciousness for the lower realm beings, no? And it can also be the investigating consciousness in a normal five-door mental process. And it can also actually have the function of Tadārammaṇa here. So it is also possible if the object is a disagreeable object. Okay, so Ahmad, you just raised your hand right now. Do you have a question?
So I thought Tadārammaṇa will have a same citta as a jhāvana, no?
No, it takes the same object.
Okay. So yeah, then Tadārammaṇa will have always only the resultant citta, not the kusala or akusala citta.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Okay. Yes. Kusala and akusala only happen in the jhāvana moments. So the Tadārammaṇa is only the aftertaste of how the mind felt about the object that it just took. No? So jhāvana reacts, and Tadārammaṇa is like the water that the example given by the teachers is like a boat that go very fast, and then the water that follows the boat. Those are like Tadārammaṇa. So it just follow, and here it is actually vipaka citta. In this case, for disagreeable object, it is akusala vipaka santirana citta performing this function. Okay, now if you remember, this akusala vipaka cittas, the nose consciousness, or it may be eye, ear, tongue, or body, and also the receiving and the investigating of the akusala vipaka, it always associates with what kind of mental feeling?
Unpleasant.
Are you sure?
Oh, upekkha. Sorry.
Upekkha.
Yes. Right. Yes, actually it's upekkha. So remember, it is very important here that although the object is unpleasant, here the mind is not reacting to it with anger during this time. Because these vipaka cittas, they only arise to perform their own function. Nose consciousness only arise to smell. the object, no? So it takes the object only, but here it actually doesn't have a preference to the object or not. So it only arrives and it does its job. It receive and investigate. So this type of consciousness, they only arise to do a function. They are simple, and so they are always associated only with upekkha feeling. Now, whether the unpleasant feeling comes later in the jhavana, if we react to it with dosa, then it will associate with a domanassa, no, with an unpleasant mental feeling. So it can only happen here, but not here in this vipaka chittas, and not in the Tadārammaṇa as well. Yes, Claudia?
Hi, my question is, you said before that Tadārammaṇa can have the function of Santirana, so life continuum. But
sorry, can you say that again?
You said before that Santirana can have the function of life continuum.
Yes.
Yeah, so I didn't understand this one actually. The moment of death, how this chitta can influence the next rebirth, because I have the quality of not of the jhavana, but of the akusala or kusala. So I cannot understand these things. How this one is possible?
I think we have to separate the processes and when it happens. That is important. Now, when I say that this Santirana can perform a Bhavaṅga function, that is for the beings who are for akusala vipaka, those are for beings who are reborn into the four lower realms only. Okay? And also that Santirana chitta, the Santirana itself is in this case, we're talking about akusala vipaka Santirana, because they are receiving consciousness which are wholesome resultant also. Okay, but in this case, and in this graphic that we are looking at the akusala vipaka, so unwholesome resultant. So unwholesome resultant here, of course, one chitta arises and then it passes away. Never does the same chitta arise and exist for more than one moment. So it arises and then it passes, arise and pass. So it's always a new one, a new one, a new one. But here, let's say this Bhavaṅga arise and pass, arise and pass, but they are the same type of chitta. They are not the same chitta, but they are the same type of chitta. Okay, same type. So here, this Santirana that arises here at this time, the function that it performs is the receiving the investigating consciousness. So this type of consciousness is the receiving consciousness, akusala vipaka receiving consciousness, but its function here at this point is receiving. Now, if it arises here, this same type of akusala vipaka santirana, same type, not same one, okay? When it arises here, it does not perform the investigating function. It performs the Tadārammaṇa function, the aftertaste function. Yeah? Okay? So,
yes, this is clear.
Is it clear? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So Shan also had you also raised your hand. Do you have a question?
Hi, Sharon. On a kusala vipaka, the Santirana could also have a somanassa, right?
For kusala vipaka.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Now we are going there. Okay.
Yeah.
So for akusala vipaka, only upekkha. Yeah. Yeah. So that point is important. What Shan is talking, was just saying right now, because we are going there in the next slide. Yeah. Because here the example we are taking is a disagreeable object. So we are talking about an akusala vipaka first here. Okay. Now we will get there. Okay. So let's continue here a little bit. So in this case, when the object is disagreeable, the vipaka chitta that arises here is an akusala vipaka, and the Tadārammaṇa that will arise here is also an akusala vipaka santirana chitta. with the Tadārammaṇa function. Now, we will talk more about what happens in this Javana and later on, but now just let's focus on the Tadārammaṇa. And not only in the five sense door process, but also in the mind door process, if the object is disagreeable, in that case, also this Tadārammaṇa will also arise with the chitta will be akusala vipaka, same way, akusala vipaka santirana chitta. Let's say I remember some unpleasant object that I saw yesterday, let's say. So in that case, those Tadārammaṇa also will be akusala vipaka santirana chitta with Tadārammaṇa function, and of course upeka feeling, no? Yeah. Until here, all good? Edith? It looks like you have something to say.
Yeah, I was just trying to find the raising hand function. So you said that we can determine if the object is agreeable or disagreeable by way of chitta.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought initially, like I was thinking, like, how can you tell? Because I thought it's going to be the feeling that will tell me if this is disagreeable or so. But that's already a reaction, right? So,
yes.
So how do you tell? Because it's upeka, it's neutral. So.
Yeah. So here we also have to remember that we are studying the Abhidhamma. It is like a minute detail of everything, right? So actually, if it is really important to determine whether the object is agreeable or disagreeable, we can actually, well, at least for me, I would say it's not necessary in daily life, in our practice. If it is necessary to define whether this object is agreeable or disagreeable, because what is happening at the moment. The most important thing is our reaction towards that object. Whether we react to it with kusala or with akusala, that is important because that is the karma that we are planting right now, and result will happen in the future. So the resultant consciousness, the akusala vipaka, resultant, we cannot change because that is already what we did in the past. We cannot change that. So whether I define, let's say, whatever it may be, let's say this water bottle, some water that I'm drinking, whether I define whether this object intrinsically is a disagreeable object or an agreeable object, I cannot change it.
Yeah.
And actually it is agreeable or disagreeable, it actually doesn't matter. But how I react to it, it matters. If I like it, I react to it with lobha, then I'm generating akusala. Be it disagreeable or agreeable, no?
May I just say why it might be, let's say, important in my mind if the object is an unwholesome resultant or a wholesome resultant. So I think, I heard this notion that the time is ripe for that certain karma to give results. So that's why I would like to know if am I experiencing a bad result? So what did I do to create that conditions to be ripe for that to happen?
I'm not sure if I understand very well. Why you say that it is. Can you just say it once more? So I will try to understand better.
So I think, or as I understand, karma has to have whatever karma will give result has to have the right conditions for it to give the result. So I'm thinking I would like to know if I'm making, the conditions for a unwholesome karma to give a result.
Yes, I think now I understand what you mean. I I think it might not be easy to understand the whole, like, because karma is actually very complex. So when does it have a chance to give result and all this? So we cannot tell exactly. So our teachers always say that what we can do is we try to keep the mind in kusala all the time, and
Yes.
we try to associate with good people, and we try to be away from bad environments. And those are the conditions that we can create for more possibility for kusala vipaka to arise. But even if conditions are very good, we see this in our life, daily lives. Like sometimes everything seems so perfect, everything seems so good, and the person just got sick, and it's just inevitable. I mean, how can he avoid? Well, what can he avoid doing in order he doesn't get sick unless he's not born? Yeah. So akusala vipaka, whatever way, it will find its way to come to us actually, because that's what we have done previously, unwholesome karma. But of course, what we can avoid is our teachers say, for example, if we know that in this country at nighttime, if you go to this neighborhood, it's dangerous. So if we put ourselves in those kind of situation, then our unwholesome karma may have more chance to arise. Let's say somebody come and pick our pocket, or we get attacked or whatever. But because we put ourselves in those situations where those kind of unwholesome karma have more chance to arise. Say if we stay at home at that night time, then maybe because conditions are not favorable for those kind of karma to arise, then maybe we don't meet that accident or something. But still, other thing might happen at home. Yeah, we cannot like totally avoid every chance for unwholesome karma to arise, because it's when we are born as a human, then things are going to happen. Or what we can do is try to like stay with keep the mind in a wholesome state. So when you are in a wholesome environment and a wholesome state of mind, then there are more support for more wholesome mind to arise. And when you are surrounded with good people, then there are less possibility for unwholesome karma to ripen. And so just those kind of things we can try our best to do, but I think it is impossible to avoid.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, so now, although I say that it is not very important in our practice to know whether this object that we are encountering with is a disagreeable object or is an agreeable object, because our reaction to it is more important. Although I say so, in order to study the mind in details, these things are important in the study, because otherwise we won't know how the mind works, because everything is connected. No, so because of the object or because of the jhana, because of something, then the chittas that arise later on will be different. Yeah. So for the study, we have to with minute detail, we have to determine what is what exactly. But for practice, and actually, our reaction is much more important. Yeah. Okay. So let's continue a little bit. Oh, Claudia, you have a question. Yes, please go ahead.
Just want to thank you, because what you said before about the object, it is really important. In my opinion, is the base of the teaching of the Buddha. Mm-hmm. Like no one ever told me that like the object was not important. When in all my life, I think that I always react to the object. If it was agreeable or disagreeable, this one was what make me react to it, right?
Mm.
So then I just want to say, even though, like if we understand that we should not react, there is some situation where, like it seems that, if the object is very disagreeable, then it's very easy for you to react to it. With anger, for example, right?
Yes.
So I want to ask you if it's normal to react, even though if you know.
I should not say that it is normal. Although it is in the Buddha's words in the scriptures, for an untrained mind, it is normal.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So for a trained mind, the mind will not react to it in that way, with understanding. So it depends on the level of wisdom, let's say. That's the most important with Yoniso Manasikara, no? Now, these jhavanas, I mean, these resultant consciousness, they are fixed. We cannot change them because they are resultant. So they arise according to nature, according to the flow of nature, how it will rise because it needs to arise at that moment. But the jhavanas, it is not fixed. It depends on Yoniso Manasikara, so wise attention, our attitude. Whether we react to the whatever we are encountering with wise attention, with good attitude, or with wrong attention, with wrong attitude. Because sometimes, even if the object can be intrinsically, the object can be a very good object, it can be a desirable object. But if we react to it with lobha, with greed, then even the object is nice, and so it's worse actually, because then we create more greed and more attachment.
Yeah, definitely. So, it's even worse.
It's worse, yeah. So, but then of course, if the object is disagreeable, or even it is agreeable, if we react to it with wise attention, we understand that it is not necessary to attach to it, or we reflect on it, then kusala mind can arise with wisdom. So anything that we encounter with is always an opportunity. It's just how we react to it. Yeah. Yes.
And kusala mind arise also once I have, or for example, I get angry at some situation, but then I say, oh, I should know better, because I know that this one is only an object that was disagreeable for me, and I react to it, right? So in that case, when I reflect upon it, then the chitta is kusala, correct?
Yes, yes. Sometimes in the first reaction, we might not be so fast or so quick to not let anger or dosa arise. But then later on, if we know, then as soon as possible is better, no? That is better. And also another thing that I want to mention is that now we said that this object is disagreeable to me, then we have to know that this is not actually the intrinsic nature of that object. It's just our preference. This is how we perceive the object as agreeable or not agreeable. So this comes in the jhavana. Because, for example, do you know durian? It's a kind of fruit in Thailand. It's a very people who likes it says that it smells very good, and people who doesn't like it says it smells very bad. Now, so it's a fruit. Anyway, so the same fruit, for someone, it is something that is so pleasant and it tastes so good and it's so nice that they really like it. But for someone, it's something so disagreeable and it smells so bad. Yeah, but it is the same thing. So the intrinsic nature of this fruit, let's say, we cannot say that it is agreeable for someone and disagreeable for someone. For the fruit itself is just the object, but how we perceive it to be agreeable or disagreeable, this is already jhavanas, our reaction to it with lobha or with dosa. So it's not really the object is agreeable or disagreeable the way that we are talking about it here. Yeah. So we have to make this difference between how we perceive, or whether the object itself is the nature of the object. Okay, so shall we continue a little bit? Yeah, all good? Okay. Now, we have seen the example of the disagreeable object. Now, let's take a look at the agreeable object. So when the object is agreeable, then what happens is that the resultant consciousness here is kusala vipaka, yeah? It's a wholesome resultant that will take this agreeable object. So in the same way, the Tadārammaṇa here that arise will also be a kusala vipaka, will also be a wholesome resultant. It can either be a santirana, kusala vipaka, santirana, no? Because in the wholesome resultant, there is also santirana, also receiving consciousness. So it can be this one, or it can be any other mahavipaka, any other vipaka chitta with roots that perform the function of Tadārammaṇa. It is also possible here. So usually for an agreeable object, this kusala vipaka that perform the Tadārammaṇa function will also be upeka, usually. So with agreeable object, this consciousness will also be the receiving consciousness also, as well as the Tadārammaṇa also will associate with upeka feeling. Now it comes to what Shan was saying, because with kusala vipaka, the receiving consciousness, there are two types that we have, the one that associate with upeka and another one that associate with somanassa. So when the object is a very agreeable object, this receiving consciousness will be with somanassa. And in this case, the Tadārammaṇa also will be with somanassa when the object is very agreeable. Okay, so this is the 5-door process, and in the same way, in the mind door process, it will also happen the same way. So this Tadārammaṇa here, this chitta that performs the Tadārammaṇa function in the case of kusala vipaka, it can be either kusala vipaka, receiving consciousness, or other types of mahavipaka, also possible. Okay, so now whether the object is agreeable or disagreeable, and the vipaka chittas that arise taking those kind of object, those are fixed. We cannot change them because they are result of our previous karma, no? Now, the thing that can be changed that we have been talking a lot just now is the jhavana. Whether we react to it with kusala or with akusala, that we can choose. Yeah, that we can decide depending on our wise attention or depending on our attitude. So those are the karma that we are planting at this moment, and then result will happen later. And these ones are results of actions that we have done previously. Now, with this kusala and akusala, there are also different types of feelings. Yeah, we have somanassa, domanassa, and upeka also. Yeah, so now we have been talking about like this Tadārammaṇa, depending on different things, different conditions, it can arise in different way. So not only does it depend on the object, the first thing that we talked about, sometimes it also depends on the jhavanas that arise before it. So if in general, generally speaking, if the jhavanas is upeka jhavana or domanassa jhavana, the Tadārammaṇa that follows will be also upeka. And if the jhavanas is with somanassa, then in general, the Tadārammaṇa that follows will also be with somanassa. That's in a general sense. Yeah. Okay. So that's another thing that will change what happens, which kind of Tadārammaṇa that arise after the jhavanas. Now, remember that all kinds of chitta, every chitta always associate with a mental feeling, with Vedana. Remember? Vedana is a cetasika that is a universal cetasika, yeah? So all cetasic, all chittas always associate with some kind of Vedana. It can be somanassa, it can be domanassa, it can be upeka. Yeah, so it must always associate with something. Now, this depending on the mental feeling, also something interesting happened here. So the Bhavaṅga chittas here, what kind of mental feeling can it associate with? Remember? This depends on the chitta, the rebirth consciousness of the person. Yeah. So if the person, the rebirth consciousness of the person is associated with upekkha, then all the bhavangas that arise later on in his lifetime will also be associated with upekkha. If the person, the rebirth consciousness that arise in that person, if it was with somanasa, then all the bhavanga that arise in that person in his lifetime will always be associated with somanasa. Our teacher sometimes said that, have you met someone that is always some kind of like happy? It's kind of like a smiley person. When you see him, that is always like kind of nice and smiley and happy. So our teacher says that if you met those kind of person, most probably their bhavanga or their rebirth consciousness could be associated with somanasa. So it is kind of their nature, you know. And some people, they are more cool and they are not so smiley all the time. Maybe their rebirth consciousness could be associated with upekkha. But well, this we cannot tell unless we have jhana or we have like very high concentration, and then we can see this consciousness. But well, we cannot know exactly. But it must associate either with upekkha or either with somanasa, right? It cannot associate with domanasa. That we already know, because domanasa only associate with dosa mula citta, no? It only associates with dosa, so it can only happen in the jhavana moments. So Bhavaṅga citta is always associated with either upekkha or somanasa. Yeah. Okay. So again, let's take the previous example. This this nose door mental process as an example. Yes, Amar?
No, it can be dominus as well, right? Not for the human, but for animals and other.
No. Remember, for the 4 lower realms, their rebirth consciousness is what? Akusala vipaka santirana citta, no? For them.
Okay.
So ahetuka, no, akusala vipaka santirana citta, the unwholesome resultant receiving consciousness is the rebirth consciousness of the beings in the lower realm. It always associates with upekkha.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. All right. So now taking this nose door process with the disagreeable object. If it is a disagreeable object, then these ones will be akusala vipaka in this case. Yeah. So in this case, they all associate with upekkha feeling. Yeah. This panchadora vajana citta, 5-door averting consciousness, is a functional consciousness. It's always associated with upekkha, no doubt. Then this nose consciousness, receiving consciousness, investigating consciousness, determining consciousness, they also arise with upekkha feeling. Yeah, no problem here. Okay, then how about the jhavanas? Now it depends. If the person react to it with, let's say, a kusala citta, he understand that this is just an object, and he can well, maybe most probably if he react with kusala, most probably will be upekkha, I think, in this case, because it is an unpleasant object. Let's say upekkha. So let's say there are some people who like something disgusting also. So maybe a lobha can arise. No, there are people who like something that is for some other people that is not agreeable, also possible. So if the person react with lobha, let's say it is possible to associate with somanasa here also. So if we react with dosa, then domanasa is possible here. Upekkha also possible. So here it really depends on the person, so jhavana. Now the Tadārammaṇa here, as we said already, for unwholesome akusala vipaka, it only will associate with upekkha feeling. This is santirana citta, no? Okay, and then for the bhavanga, again, it depends on the person. Could be upekkha, or it could be somanasa. Yeah. So each citta, one following the other, they all associate with a certain kind of mental feeling. Now, why is it important here, and why is it interesting here? With the upekkha is kind of like in the middle. Yeah. So from upekkha to domanasa, or from upekkha to somanasa, it's okay because it's from the middle. Yeah. But domanasa and somanasa, they cannot follow each other because they are too extreme. Yeah. So let's take the example of water. So let's say Upekkha is in the water form, and let's say Domanassa in the ice form and the steam form, Somanassa. So ice cannot become steam right away, and steam cannot become ice right away. Yeah? So it must always go through the middle of water. Yeah. So the one chitta that follows the other, a chitta that associate with Upekkha, then the next chitta that arises can be Domanassa, can be Somanassa, no problem. It's just like the transition, it just go there, no? But after a Domanassa chitta, right away, a Somanassa chitta cannot arise because they are too different from each other. Yeah. Okay. So let's take a look. If the Tadārammaṇa here is Upekkha, then whatever the Javana may be, whatever feeling that Javana that it associates with, be it Somanassa, Domanassa, or Upekkha, no problem. It just goes back to Upekkha. Yeah. So there is no dilemma here. Everything is fine. But for agreeable or very agreeable object, the Tadārammaṇa here can be Somanassa or can be Upekkha. Then what happens if a person reacts with dosa? Let's take a look. If a person reacts to this agreeable object or disagreeable object with Somanassa, now I'm not talking about kusala or akusala yet. It can be kusala or it can be akusala here. Doesn't matter. We're focusing on the Vedana here. So it can, let's say, Somanassa, a person can react to it, to the agreeable object with lobha associated with Somanassa. That's possible. Then Tadārammaṇa will also be with Somanassa. Yeah, no problem. Then a person also can associate with, the Javana can also arise with kusala Javana. Then the person, let's say he's understanding that, oh, this is such a good this is an agreeable object, or this is like he's understanding, or this is nama and this is rupa, and what is this and what is this? He's understanding with wisdom what he or she is let's say looking at the smelling and or whatever it may be at this time. That can also be associated with Somanassa, right? So here, never mind about its kusala or akusala at the moment. Let's focus just on the Vedana. So if it is Somanassa and here is Somanassa, then there is no problem. And if it is Upekkha and the Tadārammaṇa is Somanassa, that's also no problem. But how about if a person reacts to this agreeable object with dosa? Possible, no? It's possible. But then if it is, let's say, if he reacts to it with dosa here, then the Tadārammaṇa cannot be Somanassa. This ice cannot become steam right away, no? So what happens here in these cases is that the Tadārammaṇa will not arise. Then because of its nature, they cannot arise one after the other, then Bhavaṅga will arise. Now, if the person's rebirth consciousness, the Bhavaṅga is associated with Upekkha, then the Tadārammaṇa will not arise and Bhavaṅga will just take its place, and that's okay. Domanassa then become Upekkha again. Yeah? Then the feeling there is this does not crash each other, no? That's okay. But how about if the person's rebirth consciousness is with Somanassa? Then it doesn't work again. Now, in this case, what happened is that a guest Bhavaṅga, that is called Agantuka Bhavaṅga, will arise here. So what is this Agantuka Bhavaṅga? If the rebirth consciousness of this person is associated with Somanassa, then automatically, because Domanassa cannot be followed by Somanassa immediately, then a guest Bhavaṅga, then one Santirana Chitta, this receiving consciousness that is associated with Upekkha feeling will arise in between them, in between this Javana with Domanassa and the Bhavaṅga Chitta. It will arise here before the Bhavaṅga stream continue. So that it is now from Domanassa, then it becomes Upekkha, and again Somanassa. Then it is possible. So in this case, it will happen like that. Okay, so whatever object it may be, if a person reacts with Domanassa and his rebirth consciousness is with Somanassa, then it does not, it just can't work, yeah? So for whatever case, then always guess Bhavaṅga, Agantuka Bhavaṅga will arise. Yes, Amar?
No, but there is a Tadārammaṇa Upekha case, right? Why can Upekha case, Tadārammaṇa Upekha case arise? You can go from Domanassa to Upekha, right?
Yes, possible. Yeah, possible also. That is also possible. From Domanassa, because usually for very agreeable object, the Tadārammaṇa that arise will be Somanassa usually. But of course, as you said, that because the Javana is Domanassa, so the Tadārammaṇa, if it arises, then it will be Upekha instead of Somanassa. That's also possible.
Okay.
It either does not arise, or if it arises, it will be with Upekha feeling. Yes. Okay. So this is the 5-door mental processes, and for mind door, it's actually the same. Guess Bhavaṅga will also arise in that case if the Javanas is associated with Domanassa and the Bhavaṅga is the Bhavaṅga Chitta is associated with Somanassa. So always a guess will come in these cases. Okay, so until here we have seen that depending on the object and depending on the Javana and depending on the mental feeling, for the sense sphere being, for karma being, when the object is a karma object, and when the Javanas is also karma Javanas, then Tadārammaṇa will arise. And when it arises, it will arise in the different ways that we just looked at right now, depending on these different conditions. So that's just like how nature works, yeah. And it's very logical, no? Because the Domanassa cannot change to Somanassa immediately. So there will be some I guess Bhavaṅga will arise, and so some like everything is just works according to nature, according to its own function. So it arises one after the other, without an entity there. No, so that is what the Buddha called anatta. It's not a person who decides how things should arise. So it's just the way how nature works. All right. So until here, we have finished with the procedures of Tadārammaṇa. So Tadārammaṇa is always something like not very clear and not sure, like when we study the mental processes. But with this information, I hope it is more clear. And okay, so let's take a break of 5 minutes, and then coming back, we will see if you want to discuss about like if you have some questions or if you want to look at other types of different mental processes. Okay, so we'll see you in 5 minutes. Welcome back, everyone. Well, I will just introduce the next topic that we are going to look at are the jhana mental processes. So it's a totally new topic. So I'm not sure how you're feeling, if you want to start with something new, or it's good enough for today, and then we will slowly digest what we have just studied and maybe have a few question and answer.
One question. So are we looking into Javana and Vatavana in similarly like that, or
the Javanas and the Vatavana?
Yeah.
Vatavana is actually only the mind. Well, Vatavana is actually another function of the mind door averting consciousness. No, so there is not much to it that we need to explore, because when this mind door averting consciousness arise in the mind door process, then it's just manodawara vajana, it just turns to the mind. But when it happens in the 5-door mental process, then its function is called determining consciousness, but it's the same type of consciousness. So it arises after investigating consciousness, then Vatavana, and then the Javanas arise. So it's just only in the 5-door process is perform one function, and in mind door process is perform another function.
How about the Javana? Do we look at the Javana? Because Javana does many cases, right?
Jhavana can be either kusala or akusala or kriya for the arhats, now totally enlightened being. So jhavanas are actually what we need to know is those types of what can be there in the when we study functions in chapter 3. Then we have looked at what kind of chitta can perform the jhavana function. So all the akusala possible, all the kusala possible, then all the jhana possible, magga, phala also possible in the jhavana moments, and so that's the reaction, or depending on it. But of course, in the jhana process and in the magga process, and also later we will also look at the abhinya process, the super normal power in those processes, or the samapati processes, the attainment, jhana attainment processes. And those processes, the jhavanas are different. Then we will look at that those processes. But we will not look at just jhavana, but we will look at the whole process, different processes.
So in jhavana, there's 7 jhavanas, right? So can it be like one akusala and immediately next akusala and then akusala? No, right?
For the usual process, let's say the 5 door mantra process, those 7 jhavanas, they are always the same type of chitta. If it is akusala, let's say dosa mula chitta, then dosa mula for 7 times. If it is a kusala chitta, then the same type of kusala chitta will arise for 7 times. That's why karma is so strong. You see, they have power. They arise 7 times in a row, the same type. But in the jhana process and in the magga process, those special process, there are a little bit variations, a little bit different. So when we study that, then you will see, then they are not exactly the same type in jhavanas.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome. Yes, Sanda.
Hello. So it was mentioned that for Bhavaṅga is associated in the humans with Upekkha and Somanasa, and for lower realms it is always associated with Upekkha. Does that mean that in the upper realms is always associated with Somanasa?
No, it depends, because like the persons who attain the rupa vachara jhana, so for the fine material realm and the non-material realm, well, for the non-material realm, surely it's always upekkha, because to attain the non-material realm, they must attain the 5th jhana, and 5th jhana always associate with upekkha. So for the non-material beings, their Bhavaṅga chitta will always be associated with upekkha feeling, according to their jhana, the jhana factors. But for the beings in the fine material realm, depends on their jhana. If there's 1st jhana, then it can be associated with somanasa, because the jhana factor, there are piti and sukha also, no? So vitaka, vichara, piti, sukha, ekagata. So with the joy and with happiness, then those chittas are associated with somanasa. So therefore, their rebirth consciousness for the 1st jhana will also be associated with somanasa. So 1st to 4th jhana, their rebirth consciousness will be with somanasa, and 5th jhana, it will be associated with upekkha.
Okay, thank you. And I have another question. In the last 2 slides, there was not the 2 Tadārammaṇa were missing. Am I missing something?
The last slide, let me just go back and take a look. This one, here we are talking about that the mental feeling that somanasa cannot follow domanasa immediately. So in the case, if Tadārammaṇa arise here, then it will be either upekkha, or if Tadārammaṇa do not arise, then immediately goes to Bhavaṅga, but this person, his rebirth consciousness is with somanasa. So in that case, it cannot follow each other immediately. Then this agantuka Bhavaṅga, the guest Bhavaṅga, will arise here.
Does that mean that in the mind process, there might be cases when Tadārammaṇa does not arise?
Yes, the Tadārammaṇa do not always arise. Tadārammaṇa only arise when the object is very clear, when it is a sense object, and also when it is with karma being. So for Rupavachara being and Arupavachara being, so fine material being, non-material being, Tadārammaṇa will never arise there. Only in the sense sphere world for sense being, and when the object is a sense object, and when the jhavanas are also sense jhavana. Then in those cases, and provided that the object is clear, then Tadārammaṇa will arise. If the object is not clear, Tadārammaṇa will also not arise.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I just remembered about I've been studying. I read the Manual of Insight from Mahasi Sayadaw, obviously, and then I saw like various kinds of mental processes in a like a paper added to the book. So I remember about the dreaming, like the dreams, or when you're sleeping. Can you refresh my memory about like that process? Which process would that be when we are dreaming? Because it's still Kamavachara, right? Like it's sense sphere process.
Very, very interesting information. First, I have to tell you, when I first heard that, I was kind of like a little bit shocked or like amazed. And my teacher, Sayadaw Ukam Sachara, he told us that for an arahant does not dream. I thought that is so amazing. So actually, dreaming is just the mind rolling on, thinking about something. So for an arahant, that is totally without vipallasa, without any perversion of view, perversion of understanding, perversion of any kind. There no more defilements. Then they do not dream. They only rest. So not thinking about this and that. So at the time when I heard it, I was like a little bit shocked, because I thought then only and I thought it would be so nice. It will be such a good rest without dreaming, without like the mind still continue rolling on and thinking about this and that. Yeah. Yes. So as you said, the dreaming, it's also the actually mind door process, the Kamavachara mind door process. In those cases, it will be probably purely mind door, or it might be related to the 5 door also sometimes, because there might be experience. Let's say if we are sleeping and then the weather, the room is very hot. Sometimes we dream that we are under the sun, or we are in a very hot place. Or sometimes if we want to go to toilet, then in the dream we are looking for toilets, right? So sometimes I think it can be related to how the body is feeling also. So it can be also maybe we actually feel something. 5 sense door process is also still working, because mosquito bite sometimes. Then sometimes we move around because the body is feeling pain here, and so we're still moving. And then let's say there's mosquito, then we just like even if we are sleeping, we do like we want to push it away and things like that. So this 5 sense door process still happens. And we can sometimes still hear something. Maybe it might not be very clear, but we can still hear. So 5 sense door process can arise. Those subsequent process can arise, and purely mind door process can also arise. Then if we are really just dreaming, then most of the time will only be the mind door process. Then it will be depending on the objects that we take. It can be sometimes concept, can be stories, can be something that we remember. So it's kind of like the object we are not sure exactly, but it will be mind door process, or sometimes 5 sense door processes.
But there won't be jhavana, right, during dreaming?
There will be. Yeah, but those jhavanas, those karma are not very strong, because the intention of doing something like kusala or akusala is not strong there. But jhavanas still arise.
I assume it's a process where there is no Tadārammaṇa either.
If the object is concept, then there will be no Tadārammaṇa, because Tadārammaṇa only arise with karma object, only with sense object. Then in those cases, Tadārammaṇa will arise. Or when the object, also if it is a sense object, if it is a very great object, or it is very clear object, then Tadārammaṇa will arise. If the object is not clear, then Tadārammaṇa also do not arise. So maybe or may not.
We are still talking about dreams, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
In dreams also, the object can be clear or not clear. And it all can be a concept, or it can be also a sense object. So yeah, depending on the object.
So that means even in dream, being can perform like, a kusala or kusala kamma.
Possible, but it is not so strong as like when we are very awake and consciously, intentionally doing something. But still, yes, jhāvana still arise. Kusala and akusala. Sometimes when the mind thinks about that thing a lot, then in the dreams also it can come up. So in the monasteries, in the meditation center, sometimes some yogis, they report to the teacher that because the mind has been thinking about being mindful, being like practicing the meditation, practicing all the time. So much thinking about that, even in dreams, sometimes they report that in the dream time, they are like observing also. And so those mind can also arise. Kusala mind can also arise in dreams. Like even in dreams, like if you dream that you are helping someone, or like it's also possible. Akusala also possible, kusala also possible. But those are not very strong. I mean, not very strong in the sense that those kind of karma, most of the time, those kind of karma cannot create a rebirth. They are not as strong. Maybe they can give some result, but not like produce rebirth result, not that strong karma. Yeah. Okay. So I guess it's better we don't start the new topic today, because I think that it's the Tadārammaṇa also a lot of information, a lot of things to think about. And if we start something now, maybe we don't have enough time to finish it also, so we'll stay in the middle. So I'll just introduce what we are going to look at next week. And next week we will start with the jhana process. Is that okay? Yeah? Okay. So let's just take a look at this graphic here. Now we have been looking at mental processes. Now we have finished with the Kamavachara sense sphere mental process, which can be divided into the 5 sense door process. And depending on the objects, how clear they are, the mental processes will differ. No? Sometimes jhāvana do not arise. Sometimes even eye consciousness do not arise. Sometimes just Bhavaṅga in the very slight object, for very slight. Sometimes it's Bhavaṅga, shake, and then it goes back to Bhavaṅga. Yeah. So depending on how strong, how the impact of the object to the mind, how strong it is, different processes can arise for the 5 sense door process. Now for the mind door process, depending on whether the object is clear or not, then also different processes will arise. But for the mind door process, it is not strictly confined to the 17 moments, because it does not directly is not directly related to the rupa that let's say the visible object or the sound that arise at the same time that takes the 17 moment of the lifespan. So it does not depend on that. So purely mind door process can be shorter. It's not all the time 17 moments. Yeah. And so there are 2 types also: the subsequent mind door process, which happens right after the 5 sense door process, for the mind to understand what we just saw or hear, smell, taste, etc., and to give a concept to it. Those are purely mind door process. And there are purely mind door process which is not directly related to the 5 sense door process, like when we are thinking about something. So those are the sense sphere mind door process. Now, next week, we are going to look at the Appana mental process. Now, Appana mental processes are only mind door. This now is actually also mind door, but they are special processes. So they are no ordinary. They are the jhana processes and the magga processes. So these are actually processes that arise when a person cultivate the mind. When we practice samatha meditation, then to a high extent, to a high level, then jhana process will arise at that time. So these are the jhana process. Next week, we are going to look at how they arise and what are the processes, what follow what, and in the jhavana moments, what happened. And after we look at the jhana process, we'll also look at the vipassana when we practice vipassana meditation, and hopefully soon we will attain enlightenment. Then at that time, magga process will arise. With enough wisdom, then magga process will arise. And from that time on, there will be a big difference, because then from putujana, from a worldly being, one becomes an Arya. So it's a total change of lineage, becomes a noble being. So when magga process arises for the first time, then the person becomes an Arya person, becomes a noble person. Okay, so these Appana mental process are those processes that we are going to look at from next week. So they are special processes. And we also will look at those attainment process, and also those supernormal power process, how that works and all that. Okay, so that was an introduction to what we are, the other process that we are going to look at. So now I'll stop sharing the screen so I can see you better.
To ask if you were going to study next time the process of mindfulness.
Actually, the process of mindfulness is just another mind door process, which the jhavanas that arise there is kusala jhavana, of course, because it is being mindful, is practicing. So they are kusala jhavana, and hopefully together with wisdom. Yeah. So it's no different than any other mind door process. Just the jhavana moments are what kind of chitta arise there, and what object it takes.
Okay.
It's actually same. They are not special processes. They are actually kama, vachara, the sense sphere, wholesome mind door processes. It's sense sphere. Because for practicing vipassana, we have to take what kind of object? Remember? Nama and rupa.
Sorry? Yes.
For vipassana practice, the object of vipassana practice is nama and rupa, yeah? Yeah, so those processes, the observing this one, observe when we are doing vipassana before attaining magga, those mind door processes are actually kama, vachara, kusala processes, mind door process.
Yeah, so simple mind door processes. Okay, is it a second curiosity question? Is it a good sign when someone dreams very rarely?
Very what? Sorry.
Rarely.
Very rarely.
Yeah.
Hard to say. It depends. If he's very tired, he also does not dream. He just sleeps.
No, I meant they are practicing. They are at the center or something, and
it could be maybe.
Or in general, as opposed to like you always had dreams all your life, and it's like very rare that now you have dreams.
So maybe it could be, but I cannot say definitely, because sometimes we say we didn't dream, it's just because we didn't remember. sometimes.
I know, yeah.
So sometimes we did dream, but we don't remember, and then say we didn't dream. Or sometimes really the mind is really calm and it's sleeping very deep sleep and very well, because dreaming only happens, according to science, only happens when we are almost awake, When we are in deep sleep, then dream does not happen. We usually dream when we are almost waking up, like the mind is a little bit shallow, not deep sleep, and then it's shallow sleep, and then it start thinking and all those. If the person is practicing, the mind is very calm, is sleeping very well, that could also be.
Yeah. So I still had one more question, sorry. Still a curiosity question about arahants. So I wanted to speculate about how an arahant would take a normal visible object, and then I'm guessing you were mentioning that an average person will guess the name and just have a lot of mental process afterwards, right? Figuring out the name, the shape, the whatever. And I was speculating that an arahant would not go into the details. He wouldn't proliferate on the object, create concepts of the object.
Yeah, I think we discussed about this a little bit last sessions. So first we have to understand that when we say that the subsequent mental processes, when the eye consciousness take an object, it takes the ultimate reality only. So the visible object, But then after that, the mind, it's not that whether you want it or not, it's just the nature of the mind. The mind and the mind thought process will arise, and then it will understand, and then it will take more, like to see something, the full picture, because the mind is not capable to see everything. I mean, for talking about microscopically, it's not capable to see everything at once. So it takes a little bit of that object, and then other mind thought process will keep it in the mind, and then it will take some more, and then it will combine it, and then it will understand, it will take shape, and then it will take name. So now this is a nature. This is how nature works. This is how mind works. So even for an arahant, all this process will happen, because otherwise an arahant will not know that this is a cup or this is a pen. Then he will not know anything if this process does not happen. Then he cannot tell whether this is a person or whether this is a dog, or whether it is because he only see colors. That is not like that. The Buddha also, he knows the concept of things. So those things are natural. It's natural process. Just like when you eat something, the stomach digests it. So when you put information to the mind digests it. Now, the difference between a normal average person and an arahant is their reaction towards it. The proliferation happens in the jhavanas. An average person, not trained, untrained mind, will react to whatever object with akusala, with lobha, with dosa, with moha. But an arahant, since he is totally enlightened and he has no more defilement, he will always react to it in a positive way. Not kusala, because he will not. With functional, but it's always with good quality, with metta, with karuna, with mudita, with upeka, always with wisdom, with good quality. So that is the difference. So it doesn't mean that a person that does not, that doesn't mean that those those processes that understand concept does not arise in an arahant. It arises in him, but he understands that that is concept, and he understands what is concept and what is ultimate reality as well. He understands both. Otherwise, a baby who does not understand any concept, there could be enlightened. If it is just that, right? So it depends on the wisdom, not depends on whether he knows the concept or not. Sorry, Edith, you were saying something. Please continue.
No, I just wanted to say, like, then it's not a problem to have this identifying the object processes.
No, it's not a problem at all. Identify an object is necessary. If not, it will be dangerous. If you walk in the street, you don't identify a car, we get crashed, yeah? And the accident can happen, then anything can happen. So the concept is not the problem, but our understanding and our reaction towards it is the problem. Whether we react to it with lobha or with dosa, so those are the problem, not the object itself and not the concept itself. I think last time we also mentioned the Chinese saying about the mountain is mountain, water is water. When for those of you who haven't heard about it, who haven't heard of it, there is a Chinese Zen saying. It says when a person first haven't practiced anything, then when he see a mountain, of course a mountain is a mountain. Then when he see water, then he understand, well, of course water is just water, mountain is just mountain. Then he start practicing and he will understand that, oh, mountain is not mountain. Mountain is made of so many small little pebbles and rocks and things. So it's not a mountain. The mountain is only a concept. And water is not only water, it's H2O, it's different things, yeah? So he understands that, and then he will feel like, and he will go around and tell others, did you know that the mountain is not a mountain? Did you know that water is not water? Then people will think that he's crazy, yeah? Then later on, after he practiced some more, then he will come to a conclusion and then say, yes, mountain is mountain and water is water. So what he said will be the same as the first person who hadn't practiced at all. But his understanding will be totally different because he understands that the mountain is not just a mountain, but he understands the concept as well. So he understands the ultimate reality as well as the concept. He understands both. So that's wisdom. So the Arahant understand it that way. An untrained person understand only the concept. And then we are trying to understand ultimate reality, but we should not avoid concept because concept also exists. We need to understand both.
Yeah, thank you for the simile. It was very, very, very good for me.
You're welcome. Yes, Amar?
Yeah, but I think how do I say, the time to to process would be different, right? For it depends on capacity of the mind.
Yes.
So that means for Arnhem, they would be like their mind are so much so for us to even seeing and making it into a concept, it may take a long time. For them it's just right away, right? And then
it does depend. Sometimes it is different. For example, even for the same person, sometimes if he's tired, it takes him longer to figure out the thing. Yeah.
Right.
So
the capacity of the mind at the time, these processes may vary, right?
May vary. So my teacher also said that for the Buddha, because his mind is so sharp, then very few Bhavaṅga chitta arise in the Buddha. So let's say for us, maybe between processes, maybe billions of Bhavaṅga happen before another process arises. But for the Buddha, very less Bhavaṅga happens in the Buddha's mind. That he is always sharp and fast.
Yeah, so that means for Arhants, it's they're they just they just looked at it even in the single process. They already know what it is, and they will just
no. That to understand something, even an Arahant, even the Buddha, it must go through those processes, because in the purely idol process,
I understand it must go through. So for us, maybe it may be
maybe less.
That process. For them, there may be just few process, 1 or 2,
maybe.
right? Yeah.
Could be. Yeah, they are much faster. Could be.
Right.
Yep. So, any other question? Okay, so in that case, then we will stop here today. And next week, we will continue with the jhana processes, okay? So thank you very much for joining the class today. It's really good to see you all again and to be able to discuss the Dhamma with all of you. It makes me very happy. So thank you very much. And so let's share merits with all beings and also dedicate our effort for the attainment of Nibbana. Itam no punyam nibbana sa pacheyo hotu. Itam no punyam nibbanasa pachayo hotu. Itam no punyam nibbanasa pachayo hotu. Itam no punyam savasatanam vajima. Itam no punyam savasatanam vajima. Itam no punyam savasatanam vajima. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much,
Karma. Thank
everyone.
you.
Wish
Claudia,
everyone a good week.
yes,
Bye-bye.
have a good week ahead. Claudia, I will look at the sutta and we can talk about it next time.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Have a good week.
Bye.